with myself and with John-NIC. For any of you that watched previous broadcasts, you would have seen a couple of weeks back that John joined me for a chat in a broadcast, and we both really enjoyed it, so we've decided we might try and make it a regular fixture. It's about 9 o'clock in Brisbane at the moment, so wherever you are, morning or evening, hope you're having a good day, hope you're staying COVID safe. John's already in the room with me, so hi John, how you going?
Yeah, not bad. Yourselves?
Cool, buddy, cool. We've been doing a bit of playing around this morning in preparation for this. One of the things we had to decide on was a name for our broadcast, and we've come up with Warp Drive. I guess John will be the first to admit he's a bit of a Star Trek fan. I don't mind it. Yeah, and I don't mind a bit of Star Trek either, and we were trying to come up with a name that didn't tie us down specifically to Gran Turismo, but obviously indicated both of our love or passion for anything to do with motoring. You know, John works in the industry, so he's got a lot more knowledge to share about real life motoring than me. I'm just a bit of a car driver nut, you know, with a bit of track experience. So anyway, what we're going to do with these broadcasters, we're going to try and be diverse. We're going to try and cover off on the PlayStation stuff, on Gran Turismo, car shows and liveries and role play rooms and racing, but we're also going to try and do some stuff or talk about some real life issues around cars and things. And maybe John, you might want to just say a few things about the sort of stuff we're going to cover.
Well, pardon me, the first thing I would have thought of was things maybe like new technologies in car safety. Maybe talk about things like I don't know, maybe common things we see on the road that we think is a bit silly or a bit wrong.
Maybe some stuff too.
Definitely how to improve it.
Yeah, maybe some stuff too on you know, just general mechanical stuff. You know, like. And we talk about the game, and we talk about setups for cars, and we're trying to get the most out of them in terms of speed around the track. Maybe we can kind of relate that back to real world. I know you've had lots of experience in modifying cars and improving them and swapping bits and pieces out, and so maybe, you know, people can jump on the broadcast and they might actually have some real questions about real stuff they're trying to do with their cars, and you know, stuff like that.
Well, a lot of the experience I've come down with is because I was just quite abused with my car and I just kept blowing it up, so I had to keep repairing it somehow. So I had to learn. I couldn't afford a mechanic at the time to repair it for me. I had to work out myself.
I know they sometimes say that if you don't go off track when you're trying to put down lap times, you're not trying hard enough. I guess the same thing applies. If you're not braking your car, you're not modifying it enough.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, there you go. So we're going to do a whole stack of stuff, guys. But what we thought we'd do to kick off is we thought we'd just start going through our actual liveries. We thought that's a good place to start because both John and I are pretty mad about doing car liveries. Both of us are in the middle of doing car liveries. You can see up on my screen that I've got a BMW M4 Group 4 car that I'm midway through doing a livery for. And John's also in the middle of doing a Yaris, and what we're going to do is we're going to try and make the share play thing work for us, and during the broadcast we'll jump from my screen to John's screen, and we're going to go through all the liveries we've done, and there's lots. We're not going to do it in one show obviously because neither of us can stay awake for about 70 hours, which is probably how long it would take. But we'll obviously do a series of broadcasts. We're still working out how frequently we're going to do that, but we'll try to do them as frequently as we can. And we'll just, in each show, we'll just pick up where we left off. For those of you who've watched my previous broadcasts, you know I've often threatened that I would do this, that I'd actually go through every single manufacturer, bring up every livery I've done, and then talk a little bit about it. I don't want to rave on about every livery, but just maybe talk about some of the things that I did and what I learnt around doing livery design. because I know that for a lot of people when they join the game, they kind of fall into 3 different camps, and John, you might want to mention something about this yourself, but for me the 3 camps that they fall into is that straight away they want to have a crack at doing the livery design, or the second category they fall into is they'd like to try doing the livery design, but they're just worried that they won't be able to do a good job and it'll look crap and they don't want to look stupid. And then the third category are the people that don't have any interest at all in doing livery design, and they just want to go ahead and grab everybody else's design, which is fine if they're going to just go out and use it on a track for racing or whatever, but it sometimes can be a bit of an issue for a lot of people that do car designs when it comes to car shows. I don't know, John, whether you sort of have any other views on, you know, if there's another category that I've missed maybe.
Yeah, they're probably the main 3 categories. There's probably a few subcategories under that, like with the racing side of things. There's a couple of guys who are just interested in role playing, and there's a couple of guys who are, you know, just interested in drifting, and there's ones who sort of, you know, race as a track day type of amateur racer, and there's one that takes it very, very seriously and trying to find the most minute amount of time out of the car and spend hours and hours and hours tuning the car into it, trying to get the maximum time.
Yeah, I think they call those people obsessive arseholes, and so I'd like to introduce you all. I'm an obsessive arsehole, and I think there may even be an OAA community forming for those people, just like AA or GA or whatever else there is out there for people that are addicted to stupid things. So yeah, I think I definitely fall into that category. Okay, so all right, well let's see if we can get this share play thing going, and to do that I've got to jump out of this screen and hit the share play button. Of course this is going to fall in a screaming heap if it won't let me do it while we're doing the broadcast, but I'm pretty confident it will let me. So I'm hitting share play, start share play, and that's obviously going to send a don't you love it when a plan absolutely goes up in smoke? Okay, so on the fly, this is why we call it warp drive, because, you know, we're not exactly geniuses when it comes to this stuff, and we also don't want to take ourselves too seriously, but obviously we're going to have to make this work in a slightly different way, because it won't let us do share play while we're broadcasting, and that kind of burns up our theory of being able to jump from player to player, so that I can show you some liveries from my garage and then we can jump to John. So what we might have to do is we might have to do our broadcasts in a different way, whereby we might run through a couple of my brands, and then we might stop that broadcast and then fire up another broadcast where John is the host, and then he'll go through his garage, and we might have to do it that way. So each broadcast effectively will be a Sean livery or an IFLOWBOY livery show, and then the next one will be a John livery show. I can't think of any other way we're going to make this work, mate. What do you reckon?
It's sounding to be quite complicated right from the get-go, actually.
Yeah. Well, the only other alternative, right, is that what we do is you effectively, we keep the broadcast going and you screenshot a car. I could jump into your gallery and then preview the car while you talked about it. That should work, right?
That could work.
Why don't we try that?
I don't know if you'll be able to manoeuvre the camera around.
Yeah, you won't be able to fully manoeuvre around. That's the only downside, because it'll just spin it around, so it's limited viewing. But we could maybe intersperse that with jumping into screenshots. So you could take like a screenshot of the roof, because that's really the part we don't get to see, like that, you know, the elevated view or the ladder view or helicopter view, whatever you want to call it. And then we do the preview thing. So let's try that. Let's go up here. My menu. Friends. Don't know why you're not popping straight up at the top. top there. Don't know how this works in terms of the order. Anyway, somewhere you're going to be here. Wow. This is interesting. I would have thought you'd be right up near the top. Why aren't you right up near the top? Ah, there you are. Boom. Alright, so we go to gallery, and for all of those people out there that are you know, either Ford or Holden fans here in Australia, no bagging John because he's got a Ford badge there. Alright, so how are we going to do this in terms of finding a car that starts with an A, like that baby there? Well, first of all, we want to go to car liveries, don't we? So you can see John's done a few liveries. You know, he's been a bit lazy. He's only done 479.
Well, I mean, limited time on the machine. You can do both.
I think he's in front of me by about 70. I think I'm at 408, maybe. I don't know, something like that. Not that it's a race, all right. So all we're going to do is, I guess, go to something that starts with A, don't we? What are we talking about? A Bath, Audi, Aston Martin. What am I going to find first, John? Aston Martin. There's an Aston Martin. Why don't we go with that one? Let's open it up, and then I'll shut up and I'll let you... Hey Dan, thanks for joining us, buddy. John and I have just started the broadcast. I saw you were playing a PlayStation game. Dan's a former work colleague, folks, and I think he recently had the misfortune of being involved in a in what we commonly call as a crash in his car. Hopefully he's on the mend physically, but I don't know about his 370Z. Is that right, Dan? Please type on the chat so I can be corrected. You might want to share with us where the car's at, whether it's repairable or whatever. Plenty of time for PS4, yeah, exactly, when you're at home on the mend. Anyway, over to you, John, while Dan maybe tells us a bit about his 370Z. Not your car, okay, cool. Alright, over to you, John.
Okay, well, where do we begin, I suppose? Letter A is probably the most obvious option. I'm just trying to find... Well, I mean, is there a livery that you can see? Because I can't see anything from...
Oh, you're not seeing that? You're not seeing the gallery?
No, I can see my own gallery, but I can't see what you're looking at.
Okay, so I've pulled up your Aston Martin DB3.
Aston Martin DB3. Okay.
Yeah, the one that's done with the Bentley Speed 8 livery. That style of livery. So you can't see my screen at all, I'm in your gallery?
No, I'm just looking at my own. I'm looking at my own gallery.
Okay, maybe what you need to do is actually watch the broadcast so you can see, because share play you obviously can't see it. So
I'm not that technically minded.
Yeah, you probably need to jump out of what you're doing and find the broadcast. Well, at least, folks, for who's ever watching, at least you can see that we are really doing this on the fly. We're not sitting back with some really super duper contrived plan for our broadcast. We will obviously try to get better, a bit more polished, a bit more organised, a bit more planned,
a bit more edited, maybe.
Yeah, a bit more ready. Hey, you know, it's the internet and it's the 21st century, and you know, I don't wear a tie to work anymore, and you know, girls are wearing less and less. So I think it's becoming a more casual world we live in. But anyway, so we're looking at John's DB3 Aston Martin, which is done in a beautiful British racing green. It's got the RAF sign on the side.
At the very old one.
Yeah, the DB3, the old, the expensive DB3, the 12.5 million credit DB3, that one.
Right. Well, basically, the livery on this particular car was the car driven by Sterling Moss in 1956 at Le Mans.
Mm-hmm.
That he got third outright in.
Okay.
This was sadly the year after the massive crash that killed 80 odd people at Le Mans in the car. I think it was a
on the straight, wasn't it? Coming out of the straight, coming onto the pit straight or something.
Yeah, so two cars collided, and one climbed the back wheel of another car and sent it into the air and sent it to the main grandstand and wiped a whole batch of people.
Was the driver one of the people killed?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Amongst all the others in the crowd. But yeah, this particular car was Sterling Moss, and I can't remember who the other driver was. There was only two drivers back in those days. He got third outright in this particular car.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting when I see these cars is, and I was watching a show the other night on YouTube about the progress of Formula One, right? Because this was effectively, back in the day, Formula One, there was a real crossover between cars competing in like a GT type of event and competing in a Formula One race. It wasn't like Formula One itself had all these really specific design descriptions. You could pretty much pick up a car and plonk it into a Formula One grid, but it can be competing in something like Le Mans. But what I find fascinating is you look at this car, and whilst they hadn't quite got the idea of downforce for aerodynamics, you can clearly see how much effort they were all going to around general aerodynamics. The scalloped out nose at the front there where it drops down around the headlights, the elongated rear fins, even though they're not that pronounced on this car, they're still significant enough at the back.
Well, we certainly worked out by that stage. We certainly worked out at least the basics of aerodynamics. I mean, we also learned a lot of it through aviation and all that sort of stuff. Trying to get the planes to fly faster and all that sort of stuff. But we've always been chasing speed in some format or another.
The other thing that I find fascinating is you see these exposed pipes coming out the side on the right hand side or the driver's side, and then on the other side there's this massive metal box hanging down, like significantly hanging down in the undercarriage, and then you sort of think like
a battery,
it's almost like it is like a battery holder, isn't it? But I just think to myself, like in the day, were they aware that if the guy went off track or went wide and you could knock that off, or the impact it was having on undercar airflow, it's these sort of things that you sort of see and you go, they hadn't quite thought about that stuff. But it's a beautiful car. It's I think our friend, is it this one that Stuart says is the most beautiful car, or the D-type Jag? It's one of the two.
It really comes down to what camp you're from, to be honest. People say the D-type, people say the Aston. I personally prefer the Aston, but...
Yeah, for me, I look at the D-type and it's a very elegant shape, not too dissimilar from this. But then you see that that airplane wing on it, and you think to yourself, well, why didn't they put a what's he on it? Not an aerofoil, aileron. Why didn't they whack an aileron on it so they could actually use it to make the car go around a corner better?
Wow, who knows? Never thought of it. Bad filing, perhaps.
I don't know.
But I do find funny that like those the D-type, they've got that sort of dorsal fin behind the the driver.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That big rear wing,
went away with it
tail wing.
Then all of a sudden, all the Le Mans cars and Formula One cars have sort of brought it back.
Yeah, very bizarre. So that's the Aston Martin. It's a beautiful, beautiful car. Anything you want to share about the livery design in terms of, what you were trying to achieve? I mean, like I said, it very much looks like the Bentley Speed 8 livery revived, or am I wrong and showing my lack of history? And the Bentley Speed 8 is in fact a copy of this earlier livery. Is this a period livery that you've done on this car?
Well, it is the carbon copy of the actual car, because it was on the DB3S.
Yep.
Which is part of the reason why I did it.
Okay.
I think the only thing that's really a bit different is the wheels, and that's just really the limitation what the game offers.
Yeah.
But as far as the number of the registration plate, I don't know if you can see the registration plate.
Yeah, it's something about an emu, mate. But,
yes.
So that's actually the correct number plate that was on the car at the time.
I believe so, yeah. Going by the
46 EMU, so I wonder if that's where Valentino Rossi got his inspiration, maybe, in number 46.
Doubtful. Still on one English and one no, you probably find that the Bentleys and the Astons, given that they're all British, and back then they raced in national colours, so British racing green obviously being the British colour.
Yeah, see, I've never figured that out, right? Because the Union Jack's got no green in it, and and all of a sudden the English became famous for this green colour.
True, but we've got no green and gold in our national flag, and they're all our sporting.
Yeah, and I suppose Germany, the Silver Arrows, and their flag's red, white, and red, yellow, and black, or orange, yellow, and black. Maybe I should be saying.
Where the colours originally come from.
Yeah.
I just know they're there.
Yeah. All right, we're going to jump out of that car, and we're going to go back to your gallery when it loads up, and we're going to search for another couple of A brand cars. We got there. Oh, I just noticed something that's interesting. I wish we were up to the Shelby brand, but I just noticed a livery that I haven't seen you bring out ever before. But I won't say anything about it. I will leave it till when we get to the S's.
We'll discuss that off there, shall we?
Yeah. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a car that's brand starts with an A.
There's a Bath.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking to find it. I know you've got a cute little. This is the fun that we have, folks, when you have this many liveries.
If it's the modern 500 thing you're looking for, that may be under Fiat.
And I'm looking for the Abarth stuff. So, and there's no way for me to sort it. That's the only dilemma with doing it this way. There's a Fiat Abarth, but I actually want the Abarth, so I'll keep going till we find it.
Oh no, they're both under Abarth. I know the one you're talking about.
You haven't driven it for a while, or this is just automatically doing it in the order that they were maybe created? I don't know what looking at the dates. Yeah, I think it's in date order, so any ideas how far back it was you did the Abarths? Because I'm in October 18 now, so I must be too far away. September 18. Ah, there we. Oh no, is that the Abarth or is that the Fiat? That's Fiat. So I found your two, your modern, one of your modern Fiats and one of your older Fiats.
There's that by Pistoff or Piston.
Yeah,
27th of the 9th, 2020.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Well, if this is in order, I missed it. Alright, I'm just going to scroll madly back up. September 20, you say? 27th. Alright, I'm getting close. No, I've missed it. Well, that makes absolutely no sense, because it jumps from the 2nd of October. Oh, you said 20. You said 20. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. My bad. Okay. Oh, Ethan's joined us. G'day, Shadow. How are you? Okay, so we're going back to September. October, 21st of September. What date did you say again?
27th of September 2020.
No, not coming up. So do you think that was when you originally did it, or could you have maybe done a modification? to it.
Maybe I just didn't share it. It's just because I'm just looking in my library.
Yeah, that could be it too. Yeah, so if you haven't shared it, maybe it doesn't show up in the gallery.
Yeah, I haven't shared it yet.
Ah, right, okay, well, we'll have to skip that. Hey, Mo. A few people joining us. Welcome to the broadcast. We're kicking off this first broadcast today, John, Nick and I, and what we're doing is we're firstly covering off on liveries. However, we encountered an immediate technical challenge in that while you're broadcasting through the game, you can't do share play, and what we were wanting to do is effectively jump from livery to livery between the two of us as we went through each of the brands. But we're going to do a lot of stuff with these broadcasts. We're going to talk a lot about real cars. We've already just talked about an Aston Martin, and John's shared some interesting information about the old Aston Martin DB3 that Sterling Moss drove. And now we're just looking for a bath somewhere, and we're hoping that it's been shared somewhere. Otherwise, we'll have to
I'm
jump.
actually just sharing this bi-piston thing.
The bi-posty. The bi-post there. Yeah, no, definitely not there. I've just gone through all of them in the gallery, so excuse me. So yeah, so we're going to talk about real car stuff. We're going to talk about doing real car modifications. We're going to talk about all aspects of Gran Turismo, car livery design, car shows, role play. So yeah, I wonder if I have to jump out of car livery to escape photos, and then back to car livery for it to be updated. Or do I need to exit right out of you? Maybe. Let's try that. So I'm right out. I'll go back in. If anybody's got any questions, just or you want to make a comment, just type it in the chat field, guys, and if it's a question, we'll answer it.
That a bath is shared now. I'm trying to find that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to do. So I'll get back to September.
Well,
It still hasn't magically popped up, even though I jumped in and out.
wow.
So maybe it takes a minute or two for it to refresh. I'm going to go right out and then go back in.
That's another kitty.
Ginge or
Yeah, Gingy's around.
make a rare livery. Make a rare livery while we're doing the broadcast. Well, just on that, Ethan, we were both midstream in livery designs when we started the broadcast, and I had up a a Nike livery that I was doing, and John was doing a Yaris. But we've kind of halted while we go in and have a bit of a talk about the liveries to show people some of the liveries that we've done, and talk about the design and the car itself, anything historic about the car. Alright, let's go back in and try this time because I jumped right out. Alright. Still not appearing. Alright, in the essence of making this broadcast less boring, let's pick another car and we'll come back to... Oh, hang on, there it is, found it. It just popped in. Okay, so we're now looking at an Abarth by Posti, which is a Bertoni designed car. And it looks like, John, as I go in to preview it, it looks like you may have done it as a British American tobacco livery. Is that correct?
The bi-posti. Yeah. Get into the livery now.
It's like an off cream, off white colour. It's wearing the numbers of 26D.
Yep.
It's got William Tuckey on the side of it and Alan Grice. So I'm not sure if it's another livery that's been stuck on this particular car. Maybe I'll shut up and you can tell us about it.
Yep, so basically the driver is William Tuckey, is known as Bill Tuckey. So he was an Australian journalist in the 60s to I believe the early 90s. and our mate VHRS Stuart will be able to tell us, because that's actually his father.
I think I'm pretty confident that Bill was still doing stuff up until 2009, 2010.
I believe he was active,
sure.
but I don't think he was actually doing because he used to do the Bathurst update books.
Yeah.
Every year. I think he did it for about like early 90s or something.
Yeah.
Alan Grice is the Bathurst legend that we know of. You know, he won in 86 and 1990.
Yeah.
The Chickadee Commodore and the HRT Commodore.
Yep.
This was actually his debut year with Tucky. So,
I think he's a ginger too, isn't he? Like your cat.
He is a ginger, yeah.
Hey.
he was a smoke and ranger. So he was a young pup with Tucky who raced an Alpha. No, it was a Fiat, beg your pardon. Fiat 124 from memory. 1969 at Bathurst. I don't know how well they went. Again, Stuart will be able to tell you that. But this is the sort of tribute / replica Bathurst livery back in that year.
Cool. Yeah, and again,
I noticed a mistake on it, you bastard.
I haven't spotted it yet, but
you probably may not be able to. Where it says Grenville Motors Fiat on the back, if I look up in the bird's eye view, Fiat has bled into the centre of the car.
Okay. Yeah, on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it.
Right, I'm changing.
We'll just duplicate it, mate. It'll give it a nice little stripe effect. Hey, but it's a good point, right? So let's maybe talk about that, because you just mentioned a few terms that people that watching this broadcast that aren't either that au fait with the game or have not yet gotten right into livery design. You talked about a decal. We call all the things that you put on the cars that you can see decals. You talked about it bleeding, and for those of you who want to know, see right there on the back of the boot, you can see those black stripes right up near the window. That's actually bled. So John, maybe you want to just talk a bit about what that's all about.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for actually showing up my mistake to the rest of the world.
I'm sure we'll see plenty of mine too, don't worry.
Basically what happens is the way you load the decal onto the car, it sort of, how can I say, it sort of goes, the projection actually goes through the bodywork, if that makes sense. So it doesn't actually just sort of stick onto the bodywork, so what you have to do is actually change how thick you want that decal to be. So in other words, I made the decal too thick and it went through the bodywork and sort of stuck to the boot. So I've had to sort of thin it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, just to try and give people a bit more context, even though we're looking at an image on screen that appears to be three-dimensional, in reality we are looking at a flat one-dimensional computer screen. And so obviously when you are adding, if you like, pixels to that one-dimensional screen and you're trying to put it over an image that in turn has been digitally altered to make it look like it's three-dimensional, you're going to encounter that sort of thing because it's a layer, but the pixels themselves are being relayered to create that 3D effect. And so obviously when you stick that decal in on a certain part of the car, if you like, as you mentioned, the actual pixels are going to go backwards as the game's been designed to reflect some kind of 3D style. So yeah, it's a very common thing. It's very rare when you're doing a livery design that you won't have to deal with that sort of thing. And maybe John, you can finish off by explaining how you're going to fix it.
Just bear me a second, in a different screen now. Well, effectively what I've done was I've just gone into the decal, the offending decal, we'll call it.
While you're talking, what I'm going to do, just to give people a real experience, is I'm going to jump into my design that I was just working on, and then you can talk them through as I'm actually demonstrating and fixing it.
Basically with the decal that I was referring to, I've actually had to select it. You get your series of options on how to edit the decal, so you can stretch it and shrink it and change colours and all that sort of stuff. on the left-hand side button, it says set projection area, so that basically explains and how deep you want the decal to appear, or how shallow.
Yep.
And also project its angle. So basically I've gone to angle limit, and I'll just scroll to minus, which sort of thins out what makes the decal less more shallow.
Yep.
And eventually just sort of whittles away until I've got nothing on the boot lid. So I've just got it on the rear guard, on the fin in this case.
Yeah, so what I've done while you're just saying that is I've actually opened and pulled out one of my Bapostis, which is one of my Batman cars, and I've just grabbed the first brand decal I could find, and I've stuck it on the side of the car. Now I'm going to just play with it a bit now to shrink it down, and then I'm going to use that same tool that you just talked about to show how it can bleed. I hope it doesn't make a liar out of me here. Just tried to make it bleed and it didn't. Okay, now it is doing it.
Put it on the wing, because that's
yeah,
where
I've gone. Yeah, I had it. I didn't have it high enough, so now I have. So now you can see, folks. I've put it higher up on the wing, and all of a sudden you can see that decal has, as John said, bled through from the outside to the inside, and is now appearing on that. Well, it's not. It's actually not the boot lid, because that's the boot lid there, but it's that flat surface behind the rear window. So, you know, and as John said, how you fix it is you come into this, sorry I was too fast then, you select this tool which says set projection area, grab your controller, and basically as I reduce this down and make it a negative, you'll see it's starting to disappear magically. Now it might well be that you need a combination of the two to make it work. It depends on the angle and the surface itself. So again, that's what happened in that livery. So I'll get rid of this.
Very common thing to happen on the rear spoilers on like your F1 cars and your Group 3 cars. Put something on the side of the wing and it bleeds into the center of it.
Yeah, always does. Yeah, always does without fail. You're right. Let me get out of that. Yep, I don't want to save any changes, so I'll leave it the way it is. We'll go back into John's room. Now, is there anything else you wanted to share with us about that Abarth?
It's pretty much all the information that's available to me anyway. I do know with the Grenville with Fiat label, the orange label.
Yep.
When the car was qualifying during Saturday at Bathurst, that sponsor was never there.
Oh, okay.
So that was actually a deal after qualifying on Saturday evening with Tucky.
Is that right?
They applied that decal overnight and raced with the decal on Sunday. So if you actually Google, and a very good website to use for pictures for at least Australian cars, if you go to AutoPix and you cycle through all the options.
Yep.
There's some photos without that orange decal, and some photos with it. Because some photos were taken on the Saturday, some were taken on race day.
Okay. Well, there you go. Let's talk about we've talked about the livery, and obviously this livery isn't off this car, but let's talk about this car. And we talked before about the Aston Martin. And this is actually I think this is an older car. This is like a 1950s car, and I think like a 52, I think, and I think the Aston's like 3 or 4 years younger. But again, the thing that shows up to me is it's got that very similar scalloping of the body panel work behind the wheels, where they obviously were thinking about airflow around the wheels. It's an interesting styled car in many ways. It still looks, to me anyway, it still has a futuristic look about it, even though it's built back in the 50s. What do you think?
Full of character, if you ask me. I find it more, not so much future, but more the past. I think if you look at things like locomotives or steamboats, they've all got that sort of flared out, maybe like a girl woman's dress. I don't know where the style actually comes from, but the way it sort of flares out like that. That's what I see.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it still screams it's still something about it says that it's futuristic, and I don't know whether maybe.
I'm not too sure where the styling cue comes from, but you're right in terms of having it's a very curvature body. No sort of straight lines or anything like that.
I think what it is, for me anyway, is that there's not, like if you go back to the cars of that age, I don't know of that many other road cars that have got that side styling, if you like, or that you know, the glass house itself also is very I think very unique. Not, you know, you can see elements of that glass house in other cars, but I don't know if there's many other cars that have that whole glass house look. You know, I can see the rear window, I can see elements of the earlier Corvettes, and I can see even Thunderbird sort of similarities in the front glass and the A-pillar, but the combination, you know, and even in the middle there's a bit of the E-type Jag in the, you know, the door window and little port window behind it, but you know, the overall glass house itself is, you know, pretty unique. I don't profess to know every single car that's been built, and I don't have a photographic memory as such, but I don't remember seeing a glass house that's completely like that. And when we can't do a helicopter view from previewing John's car, obviously, but a helicopter view of that glass house is really very unique, what you see. Anyway, okay, so have you got any other Abarths, or should we look for some Audis now, or what will be next?
Probably go to Audi.
Yeah, or
the
maybe
only other Abarth I got is the modern version of the livery we just seen.
Well, I'm just thinking whether I might spot some other Astons before we go to Audi. I didn't even think to look at. How many Astons have you got? Liveries. You've got your D3.
I've done a few. I'm not sure how many I've shared. I don't think I've shared very many Astons at all. None of them have been any really good.
They really, there's one. No, they're Jags. Tell you what, when you first look at the current Jags and the current Astons from the front, you got to do a double take to pick which is which, don't you? I think there might have been a bit of well, it's all Ford owned, isn't it? So maybe a bit of. I've always said there's been crossover between the Aston design. So did Ian Callum do the Aston design? The core of it? I can't remember. I think it was Ian Callum. Well, it wouldn't be the first time Ford's, you know, shared styles. I remember blatantly, and I even wrote to Motor Magazine at the time when they launched the ill-fated Ford Taurus here in Australia, and I don't know what the sales numbers were, but they weren't spectacular. And then when Ford obviously realised they were not on a winner and reverted back to and I don't know which model of Falcon it was, but when it came out, to me there were so many elements of the Taurus even in that design, which I don't think was a hugely popular Ford Falcon design either, from memory. We might be out of luck trying to find an Aston Martin, mate. You might be dead right that you haven't shared any others. No, Corvette.
I've never really been a big fan of the Aston Martins. I've never really done anything with them.
I love their shape. I think they're one of the most beautiful and elegant shapes. I think the newer ones that they brought out in the last 2 or 3 years have kind of gotten a bit, well, I'm going to say it, a bit ugly actually, because they've obviously tried to deviate from what was a very beautiful shape in my mind to, I don't know, maybe make them a bit more edgy or just try to differentiate, but to me they've kind of failed. As a driving car, I don't think of it as a better driving car, or you know, being up there as a great driving car. But in terms of, if you're, you know, the shopping car park test, or the what would be the equivalent say St Kilda Road test, or what's the other street I'm thinking of that's very popular, all the restaurants are at in Melbourne?
Chapel Street.
Chapel Street, yeah, you know, the Chapel Street car park competition, you know, the Aston Martins for me would be right up there with some of the most beautiful designs. But as a driver's car, I don't really rate it. No, we're out of luck. Couldn't see an Aston. Let's go to some Audis then. Anything you can suggest around a date, make it easier for me to find?
So look at the 24th of September 2019.
September 2019, okay. 24th September, what do we got? We got the Bosch. Now you got two versions here. Does it matter? You got a 6 and an 8. They're the numbers on either side. Does it matter? Are they both the same, or?
Both larger the same, just slightly different colour scheme.
Interestingly, just for your benefit, if you didn't know already, the number 8 has outliked the number 6 by more than 2.5 to 1, and from a repost perspective, 11 to 1. Just a little bit of statistical stuff. We throw it all in here, folks. We leave no stone unturned as we unravel the mysteries and myths of car livery design on Gran Turismo GT Sport. Just opening it now for the preview. Alright, so we obviously have an Audi TT, and it's obviously a race car. I'm guessing it's a GR4? Group 4?
Yeah, it's a Group 4, yeah.
Alright, well, what can you tell us about this car? It's a very nice livery, by the way.
Thank you. Well, basically this is just my own concept design. I've got no... there was no sort of reference or inspiration to it. It was just something I wanted to try. I was with a particular league that I will keep nameless because I don't deserve a plug.
Yes, we're not political in these broadcasts at all, folks.
No, they don't deserve the plug because I don't deserve the airtime. So, basically, we had a competition where we had to design a team car because it was a two-driver team.
Yeah, that's the 6 and the 8. Yep, makes sense.
Yeah. So my teammate ran car 6. I ran car 8.
Okay.
Really, the difference between the two is instead of the red around the number and the red outline around the blue, his was like a fluoro green, yellow colour.
Okay.
And he had yellow mirrors, whereas I just got ordinary blue.
Okay, well let's go on and just keep talking because I'm going to just jump into that one now and
this
have a look at it.
Literally just my own design. I didn't really know what I was doing. I wanted to have like that thick lightning bolt effect.
Yep.
That was basically where I started, and then I just sort of built up on that, which is largely how a lot of my own designs go.
So we're looking at the one with the yellow highlights now, and look, it's now I can kind of get why the number 8 outliked and out reposted the number 6, because certainly the red highlights really do bring out the livery design and articulate the transition and the lightning between the blue and the white. So I can see why people would have looked at it, and it's interesting. We talk about livery design, and I've done as you know, we're both in similar leagues or in the same leagues, and I've had to do a couple of liveries for again a racing series that will remain nameless, and I've done subtle differences as well to the car livery, so you can easily tell which car's which. And but I've done other cars as well where I've done just slight variations. A lot of the time when I do a shared livery, as you know, John, I'll actually do a little bit of a modification. Might be the wheels, might be the wheel colour, or something that I do that's just a slight variation. It's interesting to see how people respond to what in the scheme of things is not a very big change. But yeah, the yellow definitely isn't, well, at least in this white background that it's displaying in, it's certainly not as effective. It doesn't have the same impact as the red. What else can you tell us about it?
Well, that's about it really. I wanted to try a new design with the thick lightning bolt, because it was something I'd never really done or tried.
Yep.
That was about it, really.
Alright.
I'm gonna nice looking car.
I'm gonna introduce it. Sorry, after you.
I used a few different sponsors like Star Will and Bilstein and Mission, which are very German/European based brands. So I just want to have a nice looking car. There's nothing really much to it.
Yeah, well, you achieved that for sure. Now I'm going to introduce a brand new thing to you, unrehearsed, and so I'm going to put you on the spot. And again, you may have to think for a second or two about the design and when you did it. I want to introduce a thing called what I call a design difficulty index, and what I want you to do is maybe use a score of 1 to 10, and just for those people that are watching or will watch, and they're either at that very beginner level, or they've done maybe 5 or 10 livery designs, or they've done 20 to 30, and they're now at a point where they want to test themselves a bit more or give themselves a bigger challenge. So what I'm going to ask you to do now with this one, and then the ones going forward, and maybe we can talk about the ones we've already shown, is give us what you feel would be the index, with 10 being the most difficult vehicle to be doing a livery on. Firstly, that's one of your criteria. Second criteria is the actual livery that you chose to do, and then with those two in mind, come up with an index around what sort of out of 10 you would rate this particular livery at, based on those two criteria. So did that make sense? So it's the car itself, how tough was the car to do as a car for a livery, and then to the livery that you chose to do, and then give me an aggregate score of so maybe you score the car first at an 8 out of 10 for difficulty, and then you score the livery at a 4 out of 10, and so then you say, well, it's a 6 out of 10 overall.
I would, as far as the car is concerned, it wasn't terribly difficult. I wouldn't have thought. The only thing that was a bit sort of troublesome was the curvature, particularly in the flares on the wheels, the rear in particular.
Yep.
When I have a fairly big or intricate decal, it does stretch it around a lot. Fortunately with mine, it was just the Bosch rivet.
Yep.
So it didn't sort of stretch it around or
Yep. For those people trying to figure out what that is, that's the grey decal that's on that at the bottom there of the C pillar that just rolls over into the rear guard.
I don't find Group 4 cars to be terribly difficult. They do sort of stick to the original body line of the car, just with a bit of a flare kit, spoiler kit.
Yep. So would you give it as a car to do a livery on? Where would you score it from, 1 being the easiest car to do a livery on to 10 being the most difficult?
Oh, probably around about 3 or 4.
All right. And what do you think about the actual livery and the way you've done it and the techniques you've used? Where would you score that between 1 and 10?
Well, I mean, this particular one was one I did a little while ago, so it was quite a simple one. It just took a lot of thinking to sort of work out what to do, because I had a clean slate to deal with. Again, I'll probably mark around about 3 or 4. It just took a lot of thinking to work out how to get the line, the outline for the red was probably the most complicated bit.
Yeah. So okay, so that gives us a score of 4. Do you think that would be, you'd then put that in if I then had to categorise based on scores, would you put that into the beginner pool, or would you say it's above beginner? So we need to sort of, I guess for me, I'm thinking beginner, intermediate, advanced. If we sort of broke down your 1, we're not going to score a 0 for something, so 1 is the starting point. So will we say maybe between a 1 and a 3 would be a beginner, and maybe a 4 and an 8, so 4, 5, 6, 7 would be an intermediate, and then an 8, 9 or 10 would be an advanced. So scores that sound like a fair...
This is probably sort of bordering beginner and intermediate, so someone who's done a few, say 15, 20 liveries, they've been fairly basic, and they want to sort of add a bit more detail, like your little red outline, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
This is probably a good starting point.
Yeah, cool. Alright, excellent. So we've seen those 2 cars. Now, any tips on any other Audis that I can quickly spot? I'll start scrolling while you check. If I spot one immediately, I'll just jump into it.
I think that's about the only real Audi I've done.
Okay.
That's only because I had to do it. Because we had to drive a Group 4 full drive car at the time.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, I think we might try and spot some BMW. I think you've done a few of them.
I've done a few BMWs. Yeah.
So I just saw one, but and it is one I've seen you bring out to a few car shows. But I'm just going to go back up to the top because it makes sense for us to start at the top and work our way down. And just waiting for it to load the pictures, and I'll stop at the first one I find. And it happens to be, lucky me, my favourite car to do liveries on in the game, which is the BMW VGT car. And for your reference, John, because I know you're not seeing my screen, it is the number 46
Blue and white
blue and white with the red highlight line, very Nissan Motorsport kind of like. So it's on the carousel now, spinning around. If you want to tell us a bit about this livery.
Well, this is actually Peter Brock when he went to Le Mans in 1976.
Now, what car would he have been in for that?
He was in the BMW 3.0 CSL, the Batmobile.
Oh, really? What a shame we don't have that car in this game. Oh man, I could do some liveries on that.
It's a bit of a pain in the ass actually, because I really want that car. So.
Yeah, well, let's just pause for a little note of advice to Polyphony. Please bring out in GT7 when you do some of your updates and car releases the 3-litre CSL E9s. I think they are, aren't they? Is that right? E9s? I think they're E9s.
And while we're on this topic, Polyphonic, can you please bring out the Ford Sierra?
Cosworth edition.
That's right. You've got the E30 BMW. You've got the R32 Nissan Skyline. Why not a Sierra?
Yeah, why not indeed? That's a very good point, mate. Very good point. We can start a petition or a change.org petition or something. I don't know. GoFundMe page. Let's start a GoFundMe page to fund us to spend more of our time hassling Polyphony about putting a Sierra in. That's a great idea. I like that idea. And look, you know, all money that's not spent on that crusade will go into our pockets.
Absolutely.
All right, back to the car.
It's a not-for-profit organisation, but if it's there, we're taking it.
Yeah, back to the car. So,
Yeah,
went to Le Mans in 76, you said?
Went to Le Mans his first time in 76.
Yep.
With a largely unsponsored car, largely self-funded. So this was during the time he first left Holden HR, or the Holden dealer team back then.
Yep.
And he was out on his own, and Bill Patterson sponsored his Subaru back then. Bill Patterson put in a fair amount of change to run his BMW. I think he actually ran this car with his brother, Bill.
Okay.
Philip Brock.
Yep.
So, and I think the car was largely unsuccessful. Not much is ever mentioned about his Le Mans exploits, even though he's been 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, okay. And what, like, do we know why, like, why at that stage in his career? Because I think in 76 he would have been, what, 5 to 7 years into his, I guess, his prominent racing career. Would that be about right?
So what, 1976 he won Bathurst twice by that stage.
Yeah, so he was, you know, he was sort of, he'd hit that level where he was, if you like, he was at you know, he'd reached the peak. No, I'm not going to say the peak of his career, but he'd reached the peak of the sport in terms of his achievements in Australian motorsport.
I think he just wanted to try his hand against the world. He said he's won Bathurst, he won Sandown. I think he won a touring car championship by that stage.
Yeah.
He wanted to push the boundaries a bit and race around the world.
So he wasn't chasing he wasn't necessarily chasing a career in racing internationally. It was just purely to go over there and compete with an Australian race car. Is that pretty much the story?
Yeah, I don't think
Excuse me.
an international career. I think he just wanted to try his hand at it and sort of have a bit of bragging rights, which was probably more what it was. But yeah, it was up against the Europeans in their own game. It's a difficult task.
Alright, so...
I don't even know where the car comes from. I don't know where you got it from. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to take a stab and say Bill Patterson gave it to him, given that he was a BMW dealer.
Oh, possibly. Yeah, I don't know. I've never actually researched it. In comparison, there's very little information about his European campaign.
Maybe it's something we can ask Stuart to fill us in on. Now, on the subject of bleeding, mate, I have noticed though that the Acme Gene & Co.
Yeah, I just saw that then too.
He's actually bleeding. That's a very, very common thing that happens with this particular car, because it's got those significantly flared guards at the front and the back. So it's one of those.
I think I actually saw that originally. I thought, well, by the time the car goes past on a camera,
you're probably going to spot it.
No one's ever going to be caring about it by that stage.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes, when we're doing designs, we kind of make that decision, don't we? We kind of go, you know what, it's not that bad an issue that we need to do something to correct it. But again, folks, as you saw, there is a way to get around that. Sometimes, though, it may not work. That's the thing to also say. Okay, so in terms of if there's nothing else you want to share about the car, again, I'm interested. That's the number 46 for all those Valentino Rossi fans. There's obviously something about 46. I wish I knew what it was, but it's obviously a number that's very popular. Where would we sit this one on the index in terms of the car to do a livery on, and then the actual livery that you decided to do?
I found this one quite complicated. I would give it somewhere around about 6 or 7.
Yep. And is that because of those flared guards? Yeah.
The flared guards are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I agree. All right, and the livery itself?
Pretty simple. I had to make the Acme Gene Co decal myself, so that's just using the GT library features. Yep. That's not a downloaded thing, so that was complicated. But the actual layout of the car is pretty simple. I'd probably give it a 3.
Okay, so we got a 3 and a 7, so we add the 2 together and then divide it by 2, we get 5.5. So that definitely puts it right smack bang in the middle of the intermediate.
The thing that makes it complicated is those the curvature in the guards. You really have to be careful of what camera angle you use to put the decals on, particularly the front.
Yep, fair enough. All right, but it's a beautiful car. It's the livery itself really does suit the car. That's the good news. All right, so let's go back in and we'll continue down till we find another BMW or two.
There's about 50 of them, right?
What we'll do is we'll do one more, maybe 2 more, and then we might jump into my garage and we'll go through some of my A's. Okay, this is the next one, and it's the Brock Baird Bathurst car. The auto art, which you have brought out on many occasions in car shows, which I think has widely been successful in terms of winning what we call a podium spot in the car shows. So it's up on the screen now on the carousel spinning around.
So this one is based on the VX Holden Commodore V8 supercar. And I just used the BMW like most Aussies. I use this particular BMW because that's by far the closest shape to the Commodore. So this was his last, I believe his last privateer campaign, 2003 from memory. Before he went back to HRT for one last run. Again, don't really tend to see much about this car, which is half the appeal why I did it. Plus, I reckon it looks pretty good.
It does.
He put a deal together with Motorola and Auto Art. Auto Art's the die-cast model creator, the 1/18 scale model cars get. He actually put a fairly strong campaign because he used this particular livery for the V8 supercars, and then he had a Monaro for Targa Tassie,
Yep.
A matching black one. I think
Yep.
they had a red
Remember
one
that.
as well.
Remember those two? Yep.
Again, I don't think this particular car did all that well. In fact, I think it was a DNF.
Okay.
But
Was it a failure or was it a crash?
no, I think it was a mechanical failure.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah.
The big talk about him coming back. I think this was his first year since retirement.
Yep. Yep.
Coming back. And, didn't do too well. But the car was gorgeous. So. For some reason, no one really remembers it or talks about it. Everyone talks about his HRT car and old dilettante cars, and that's about it. So they tend to forget about his other campaigns.
Yeah, and just to touch on a couple of points. So, obviously, prior to you, did the car just run at Bathurst, or did he actually run through the Touring Car Championship with it?
I think it ran at Bathurst only.
Okay.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Again, information on this is quite limited.
Yeah. I sort of tend to think that, from my own, I guess, experience or knowledge, is that you generally tend to find that the cars that just roll out of the truck for Bathurst tend to be the ones that have the most gremlins, whereas the seasoned, hardened cars are usually more likely to survive the day's events. Not always the case. Obviously, there's still lots of components and really simple components that can fail, and we've all seen those stories over the years. But yeah, definitely you tend to hear more about the one-offs, if you like, or the guys that have just decided they've put a package together to go and do Bathurst, and they're the ones that tend to be getting all the wrong attention because they're either out early or they're repeatedly in the garage getting this, that and the other thing sorted. So yeah. The other thing too to just mention or to talk about is the fact that, as you said, this particular car, the BMW M4 GR4, tends to be the most popular. There's two cars, but this one I think tends to be the more popular one for doing V8 supercar liveries, and it is really because the side profile most closely mimics the V8 supercar, but even more so the front end. To me, the front end is very much like the Commodore and the to a degree the Falcon. Obviously not as much, but yeah.
Particularly the VT.
Yeah.
VT VX range. They've got a very similar sort of front end.
Yeah, very similar. I know with my my Castrol car and my Craig Lowndes cars, for me it was a no-brainer to use this car to do those liveries, because it just, to me, you see the front end, it just screams very, very similar. The similar aperture, the front air ducts, the main air duct in the middle, the grille shape, the headlight sort of profile is very, very similar. So yeah, no, that's very nice. It's a very, very nice livery. So obviously we need to give it an index score. So I'll pass back to you for that.
To actually work on the car, it was really simple. It was actually a lot of fun to work on the car. The complexity of the livery itself, I would probably give it a 5 or 6. And the reason why is there's actually a lot of detail in here that you probably wouldn't see a lot. So for example, if you look on the back of the car where it says auto art, there's like the two roads that sort of converge together.
Kind of a swoosh, like a Nike swoosh sort of thing. Yep.
Yeah. So there's actually a whole batch of decals in it to get the right shape and the right curvature and thickness and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And the other thing is too, with where it says auto art, it's obviously got auto art laid over the top of each other.
Yeah.
So that's actually not one great big decal. That's the auto art's actually about 5, where I've layered it over the top of each other.
Yep.
To get the black outline. The A and A, the grey A and A is a separate decal again. The lines are all separate, so I've had to piece it all together.
Yeah. And
of course, using a black background, that makes it very difficult.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said.
Same thing with the 05. If you look close to the 05, it's black and white, black and gold over the top of each other.
Yep.
Try and get the lines around the curves and all that sort of stuff. It's an absolute pain in the ass.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It's you know, it's an exercise in patience, isn't it? Yeah. So what are we going to give it as a livery design score?
I love the design, but the complexity was quite high. I would give it 6 or 7, maybe.
Okay.
Probably 7.
And what did we say for the car itself? What did we score it? A 3 or 4, I think you said, didn't you?
Yeah, I find it quite easy to work on personally.
Alright, so that'll give us another 5.5. So again, smack bang in that intermediate space. Alright, so we're up to that rock car for you. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump out of your gallery and we're going to jump into my liveries, and we'll start with A's. Now thankfully, what did I say? Actually, I have got more. I thought you had more than me. I've got 610. Okay.
Probably only shared about 400 something.
Maybe, yeah. Anyway, there you go. I've obviously got too much time on my hands. So as I said, we're going to do it by manufacturer. Yeah. Yeah, Bachelor Life. So we're going to start with the Biposti, and you've already seen this car if you've been watching from the start of the broadcast. This is the Biposti, and because it's my garage, I can obviously do the full 3D 360 view. We've talked a bit about the Biposti already, so I'm not going to talk a lot about the car because we'll just be going over the same ground. But you know, obviously I looked at this car, and one of the first things that I thought of, I talked about it being futuristic, but I also looked at it and went, you know what, that looks very much like a kind of Batmobile sort of car, and from that point on I just went down the path of doing this livery. Now I have had it pointed out to me that to be actually 100% correct, whilst I've used red, I should really in fact be using a deep orange. Now that was a fellow player and a game friend of mine that pointed that out, and so I will I will go in and fix it up and you know, convert the red into a deep orange. The interesting thing is that he's the only one that's pointed out, and he's a bit of a Batman nut. Pretty much everybody else has never said boo about it, but to me it just lent itself to doing this livery. What else can I tell you about the livery? There's a lot of customized decals. You can see the Batman the Batman decal that's been customized around the outside of it. The Batman decal on the bonnet is a purely self-made decal in the livery editor, so it's not a decal that I've dumped onto it. Apart from that, it wasn't that tricky. There was a little bit of work to be done around the rear fins to get that yellow and red line running all the way from the front of the car all the way through to the back. So yeah, so as a livery, I think we talked about this car as being only about a 2 or a 3 to work on. There's not really a lot of things that can catch you out in terms of doing your livery design, so I think a 2 to 3 is about the right score for the car itself as a livery subject car. And then this design, again, I would sort of score it in the, around the 4 mark. So that'd give us about a score of a 3.5. So, I think a beginner could have a crack at doing a livery of this sort of type. Albeit you may not want to, totally different, but the point is you could definitely have a crack at it. And I think you'd do a pretty good job if you're at that level. Alright, so I jump out of that car and I'll jump into the next car. Now, for that, you know what we didn't do, John? I know you've got some. We didn't do alphas. Alright, we'll have to remember to backtrack to do alphas. So, look, I've got, what have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 customized liveries. There's obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars that I've not yet touched. And if John had his garage open, you'd probably see a similar thing where he's got way more cars sitting there than he's done liveries, because if you play the game as regularly as we do, you tend to accumulate more cars than you have time to do liveries for. So I'll just go from left to right. I'll try to be quick because there is 6 or 7 and I'm mindful of keeping this interesting. The Alpha 4C is it's a pretty cool little car, to be honest, whether it's in the racing version or the road going version. I'll just rotate slowly around this. This particular one is one of my TechWise cars. TechWise is a company that I run. I don't own it, but I run it. And so I've done a few liveries now for the company.
So what was it, 600 something you said?
610, yeah.
Custom TechWise liveries. Cars or?
Oh, TechWise cars. Yeah, no, I haven't done that many, but I think I've probably done about 15 now, maybe somewhere like that. So what can I tell you about this design? With most of my designs, unlike John, John is very good historically when it comes to Australian race cars in particular, and probably liveries that are would it be fair to say pre-2010, John, or even go further back?
I'd go further back, so I've sort of focused more, if you sort of follow the Australian touring car range, I focused sort of pre-Group A.
Okay, so sort of basically 1991 back, yeah. 92 back, yeah. All right,
particularly so in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, whereas me, I tend to take the path of just coming up with my own liveries, which is probably good and bad, because sometimes you can do a livery that may not come together the way you like, or people may not identify with it because it's nothing they've seen before. But yeah, so this livery I've tried to obviously integrate both the TechWise company and also a lot of our major partners, so you can see a lot of technology brands and decals on there. And I've also tried to be fairly colourful. I've used what we call a colour transition or a colour fade. So from the front you can see it's pretty much a black, then it sort of fades to a grey, and then ultimately to the yellow at the back, with obviously the green interplaying with it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about the livery other than to give it an index score. So I'm interested in what John thinks about this, but I think as a car, the race car itself is not that hard to do liveries on, so I would probably put it at around a 2 or a 3 as a car.
The hardest thing about the Alpha 4C is driving it, tuning it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we haven't talked about driving yet, but we will get to that. And yeah, so that's where I'd put the car itself. This livery, I would probably rate this in about the 6 or a 7. As soon as you introduce colour transition or a colour fade, you immediately put some pressure on yourself to get that, not only get the blend of the colour right, but to get the location of the blend right. So often you can do a colour transition, but then you sort of go, oh, hang on, I've done it too far back, or I've done it too far forward, and I've lost the balance of the colours, or it doesn't fit with maybe the contours of the car or something like that. So as soon as you start to introduce colour fade, there is another piece of thinking that you've got to do around how that's going to all come together. Obviously there's a bit of work around the decal placement itself. So yeah, I think about a 7 or a 6 on this one for complexity of the livery design itself. Not impossible, certainly not impossible, certainly not super hard. But yeah, I think that'll get us at about a 5.5. So intermediates, again, this is the sort of stuff you can be trying to attempt to do. Some of the techniques, highlighting lines, border lines, transitions, angles, all that sort of stuff. Alright, that's the first alpha. Excuse me. The next alpha is a Martini variant. I'm John will confirm this, that I'm very wary of treading the well-trodden line of livery design that you see in the game, which is pretty much people doing replicas of the most prominent or popular motor racing cars that you see around the world. And in the game, what do we got, John? We got Martini, we got Monster, we've got Red Bull.
And Red Bull. Jeez.
Is there anything else? Is there one other? Oh, Gulf's another one.
Yeah.
And JPS. They're probably the 6 most dominant, if you like, identified liveries that people copy. Is that right? I think that's pretty much everything.
Worldwide probably, but definitely in Australia you have those stupid Vodafone cars.
True.
And the Dick Johnson Mustang, the Shell Mustang.
Yeah, the Shell. Yeah, the Shell's the other. Yeah. So there are probably let's say there's 10. Let's say there's 10 very distinct race car liveries that have been pretty much flogged to death. And so one of the things that I won't do is I won't do a replica livery of any of those. If I do decide to do one, I'm generally making it a very, very different iteration of it. And so with this one, as you can see, that's exactly what I've done. I've not followed the traditional striped line setup that's common in the Martini. The closest that I get is this roof logo that you can see there. That's the closest that I get to it, but the rest of the car is a significant departure away from it. Still using similar colours though, but not exactly the same, complete white and minimal. Pretty much 60% of this car is in this I don't know what I call it, off duck blue colour. I don't know what I call it. Again, not much that I want to talk about with the livery. I think I'll just jump straight to a score. Again, there's nothing super difficult about this livery, so I'd probably score it less than the previous one by a point in terms of the complexity of the livery. The usual things apply around edges, getting them right, but I think really it's probably only a 5. It's probably actually a 5. It's probably not even a 6. And then the car we already talked about is really a 3. So that gives it a score of 8 for a total of 4. So this is something that beginners, when they've sort of got 5 or 6 to 10 maybe liveries under their belt, this is the sort of thing that they could be trying to do, the sort of techniques around sloping decals, blending colours, angled decal placements and inset colours, things like that. They're all definitely in that space. Okay, now let's go to the next one. And I'll probably talk less and less about each of these alphas because they're effectively the same car. It's really more about showing the livery than talking about it, because I don't necessarily think there's anything unique that I have to add. Jumps out of order when I go to that, but that's okay. We'll jump to the one I picked. Okay, so this one is a combination decal of main sponsors being Momo, Coca-Cola and Alfa Romeo itself. Again, it's just about picking colours. Maybe we should talk a bit about that, John. And I just noticed a bit of a potential bleed issue or a decal design issue. Anyway, I'll fix that later. The importance of getting your colour palette right when you're doing a livery. You want to maybe say something about that?
Well, I mean, a lot of my cars have been replica based, so finding the colour hasn't been all that complicated. Although I have altered them deliberately on some occasions. Sort of, everyone will have their own different method on how they come up with the colour. Whether they just pick, say for example, they use a Ferrari, so they'll just find a shade of red because red is synonymous with Ferrari. Or whether they actually find a series of decals. They've got the car pictured in their head, and they want to find all the decals first, and they select all the decals, apply them onto the car, and then you would paint the car last and try and find the right colour. There's a couple of different ways of going about it. I personally find the colour first, and sort of work with, try and find sponsors that are the correct or the appropriate colour. You mentioned before Momo, Alpha and Neo and Coca-Cola, they're all predominantly red, so they all match really, really well anyway. So I think it comes down to how you like to, how you create something, and that's your own personal way of thinking. There's no right or wrong way of going about it. It's just your own unique method.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that, excuse me, is that some colours go better with other colours, and you know, and that's where your creativity and also your experimentation will come into it. Because, you know, if I think back to when I was doing this livery, and it is a bit of a challenge to think back to when I was doing it, but you know, I don't think that I was ever at a point where I was taking any risks combining white, red, black and grey. It's pretty hard to not get those colours to work together. You know, if I was doing, say, a red, black, green and purple, then I'm probably giving myself a bit of a challenge. So yeah, so, you know, and as John said, you know, try and figure out your colour first. Try and figure out, if you're doing, you know, sponsored decals, you know, try and figure out what those colours are. And certainly the idea of having colours that match the paint, or at least do a good contrast rather than an awkward contrast, is the key. Quite like this livery. Complexity wise, there's probably a few things that are a little bit more complex, like for example the way I have highlighted the side duct with that grey. That's a bit of work involved in getting that right. Again, as John talked about, doing your multi-layered decals, a little bit of work around that. As you can see there with the PlayStation logo at the front as well. And just some tricky stuff around insetting things in those Venturis that you just see there and there. So this is probably in that 6 or 7 class. I'd probably say it's a 6, which would give it a score of 9, which is 4.5, which again is, you know, certainly in that higher end of the intermediate, so just on the cusp of going from beginner to intermediate, I should say. Okay, next one. I'm just thinking, in the essence of time, we've been going for an hour and 27 minutes. We might do this car and then we might wrap up, I think, because that'd be an hour and a half.
I think time has gotten away from us this morning, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of mucking around at the start, didn't we?
Yeah, butt arsing around with complexities and ironing out issues.
Yeah. So this car is the road car version, so hence it doesn't have the same full rear spoiler, but otherwise I think the body kit's pretty much the same. And straight away I'm going to say that this is also a much simpler livery, even though I've done the similar highlighting around the duct, and I know this was an earlier version, and it probably serves as a good example to show how my if you like, competency around livery design has progressed, because you can see that that section around that side air duct, the quality of the work that I've done there is nowhere near as good as the previous car that you saw. And I know I did this car a long time before I did the red and black, grey and white Alpha I just had up on the screen. So it does go to show that, you know, as you do more liveries, you will get better. Your eye will get better, your techniques will get better, you'll be more confident, etc. But this one, you know, overall is a very basic livery. I wouldn't say it's complicated at all. I'm probably going to give it a 2 on the scale for livery, and the car we already know is a 3, so that's a 5, and that gives us a 2.5 score. So I'll jump out of this car. I don't know if there's any point talking more about it. What we haven't talked about is tyres and wheels, but we might talk about that in the next broadcast. So let me jump into Alfa Romeo, and that really only leaves 2, so I'm going to be really quick. In fact, it only leaves 1, so that's perfect. Got 10 seconds to talk about it. I might be a bit longer than 10 seconds. Ooh, some decals could not be found. Quickly talk about that. When that message comes up on your screen, what it typically means is the person that created a decal that you used either deleted it or withdrew that decal as a shared decal, so it won't display on your car anymore. I can't tell which decal might have been taken because it's pretty well populated. For your benefit, John, this is the black car with the purple and pink octagonal shapes all over it. So it's a pretty, the pretty wild design. This was a very complicated design because a lot of that work that you can see is not a wrap or a decal. It's just me physically creating, locating and joining lines, so quite a bit of effort involved, and playing with quite a few different shapes and getting them to blend as well. So this is going to be one of the more complicated liveries to do. It certainly took a fair amount of time. It does get a lot of comments whenever I bring it out on the track or in a show, because it, I think for 2 reasons. One, it's a very I don't know what the word is to use, chaotic design, I'll call it, and obviously which what? Busy design. Yeah, it's a busy design. And the other thing is the colours. Obviously you've got the contrast of the black with the very bright fluoro purple / pink. Yeah, so again, the car itself as a vehicle to be doing a livery on is only a 3, but I'm going to give this one a score of, I might even give it an 8 actually, because of the line work and getting that all to match correctly across the contours. So that'll give it a score of 11, which is a 5.5, so that's smack bang in the middle of intermediate. Yeah, okay, so that's probably all I want to say about this car, and it's a great point to end showing the cars. I think I'll get John to give his comments as well, but I think as we go through and we look at these designs, what you're going to see in each of the brands from both of us is our own progress from being at that beginner level, getting into the intermediate. And I don't think I'm blowing smoke up John's butt or my own by saying that after 470 odd liveries for John and 600 and whatever it is for me, we kind of feel like we're at the advanced level, and it'd be hard for you not to be after doing that many liveries. But the journey itself has been interesting. So I don't know what your thought is on that subject, John, or if you've got any advice to give somebody that's watching this for the first time, thinking about I want to do a livery but I don't know what to do or how to do it or where to start.
I started off doing replicas of the Australian cars, and that was probably a good way of, because you physically have a picture in your hand of how you want the car to look. Say with the BMW or the Nissan, you try and do like the Winfield Nissan, for example, and there's a trillion of them around. It's a very good way of actually learning techniques and placements and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Because you already have the map in your head or in your hand.
Yeah.
You know what you're trying to achieve. If you sort of go with your own design, you sort of end up with a mishmash of rubbish.
Yep.
What you could do, I should say.
Yep.
But really the only thing I would say is don't be afraid of actually trying a different technique. No one's ever going to see a failure because you're never going to share it, so no one will ever know about it.
Yeah. I think sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just have a crack at it. I mean, that's all I've ever done. If it doesn't work, you delete it and try something else. Simple as that.
And you know, to pick up on your point about no one's going to see a failure, you know what? What is a failure, right? If you do create a livery and you're happy with it, then it doesn't matter what other people say about it, right? It's, you know, if you're happy with it, you're happy with it. And perhaps the only way you're going to, you know, effectively put your design skills to the test is by letting other people see it. You know, I think, you know, I totally agree with John. You know, if you're doing and I'm just trying to find a Winfield car of John's, which I've just found, so I'm going to bring it up on the screen. It's a Fugu Z car. But I think, you know, when you're doing your livery design, as you're doing the design, if you feel it's a disaster, then as John said, absolutely, just, you know, wipe the slate clean and start again. It doesn't have to ever see the light of day. No one's going to be over your shoulder watching you do that livery. So, you know, you can feel free to have a crack at anything you like. Sorry, John.
It actually cost you anything to actually get rid of that. All it's done is cost you a bit of time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like you have to pay to do a livery or anything like that. So just try different techniques, overlap colours, mix colours. The GT library, it's got all the different shapes and blendings and all that sort of stuff. You can come up with all sorts of different techniques. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I use, particularly my earlier liveries, that was all GT library. It was all because I didn't know how to upload decals, and even then the decal that do upload are very basic and bland.
You're definitely in front of me. You're definitely in front of me on that front. My number of uploaded decals is a grand total of 1.
So, but if you actually look at the decals that I've uploaded, a lot of it's just texting anyway.
Yeah.
It's words, and that's just a simplified uploading a particular word.
Yeah, it actually just saves time, really. That's all it does, because you know, you can physically recreate those text decals very easily in the library. But again, you know, I think about my 610 designs, and I think about IFLOWBOY at YouTube. Now, IFLOWBOY at YouTube is effectively what is it? It's 8, 9, 10 decals being placed on the car every time, because I've got to place, you know, I've got to place each letter and the ampersand symbol, and then place the YouTube decal as one hit. So I think that's right. I think it's 10. IFLOWBOY's got 7 or 8 letters. iFlow, it's 4, 5, sorry, 8. Yeah, I'm right. 10. It's 10. So I think about the time that it takes for me to do that, because 9 times out of 10, IFLOWBOY has to be each letter has to be resized, reshaped, and then positioned. So I'd hate to think how much time I've actually spent just whacking that decal on all of my liveries. So yeah, so to bring it back to the point we're making, yeah, just have a crack. Don't be afraid of failing, because you know, it may not actually be a failure. It may just be that what you've chosen to do is not everybody else's cup of tea, but that's okay. You know, you're doing it for you at the end of the day. You're not doing it to...
If it's something you don't like, delete it.
Delete it, yeah.
No one will ever know.
Well, what did I say? You know, let's a good note to end on. Let's go back just very quickly, and I'm going to see whether...
If you bring up one of my mistake liveries, I'm ending this conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm going into mine. You can relax. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I go into my library. I'm going to see if I actually did a save of the Nike livery that I'm currently working on. I told you about it before we started the broadcast. No, I didn't, bugger. What about the GTR? I'm just trying to see if I can find a shot of a livery where I started, and then I don't think I'm going to find it, because I think I went through and cleaned everything up. Oh, okay, well, here you go. Now, you can't see this on the screen, but I'm going to preview this Honda this is the point that John just made, and it's a really good point. Now this is the start of a livery that I was trying to do. John, you can't see this, but it's a plain black Honda NSX Group 3, I think, and it's the very start of what became my Pennzoil Honda NSX, and it's got one decal on the side. Apologise, I can't jump into it and show it in the full gallery preview mode, because I was going to head down a particular path with this livery design, and I played with this shape for about an hour, and there's actually the shape and then there's boxing around it, and I just kept looking at it and I just couldn't get the look right, and so in the end I scrapped it and I went totally back to the drawing board, and this is what I ended up coming up with ultimately. And again, I won't be able to show you the full car because I'm not in livery editor mode, I'm in my library, but that, you know, attempt to do something different actually ended up becoming this. And again, if I could, I would show you the 2 or 3 saved iterations of this where I'd done stuff on the side with the Pennzoil logo and customizing around it that you know, looked rubbish, and I had to scrap it and start again. You know, this Nike car, which I will go into livery editor and open up, because I want to just quickly talk about where I monumentally stuffed up on it. Last night, after spending 2+ hours, and then we'll end the broadcast. But so if you can imagine the car as I bring it up, this car, what I'd started to do, if I zoom in, is I started to bring that grey colour down and around the Nike word itself, and slope the line back up in you know, adjacent to the white swoosh line as it goes up from the door all the way back up to the rear tail light. And then I also filled in down here with similar grey colour in a triangle that effectively also ran adjacent with the swoosh. And I finished doing it and I zoomed it out like this, and I looked at it, I went, that looks just awful. And it did. It looked horrible, absolutely horrible. So even though I'd put in 2 hours on it, for me, I couldn't just go, oh well, I've spent 2 hours on it, I'm going to leave it there, too bad. No, I just couldn't be happy with it. So this is what you're going to go through when you do livery design, and it's not a deterrent. It's not a, we're not saying this to put anybody off. It's quite the opposite, because what you find is when you do that stuff and then you go back and, you know, commit to make sure you're going to do a good livery that you're happy with, you will end up doing a good livery that you're happy with. So, you know, persevere, and you know, the results will come. All right, it's been great. I hope you've enjoyed the broadcast. I've certainly enjoyed our inaugural broadcast of Warped Drive, and we hope to do many more. We, you know, obviously want to encourage people to get on board. We will certainly keep investigating the technology so we can create a more fluid experience and immersive experience for us to cover off on what we're talking about. But for now, thanks very much for watching. Subscribe, send us comments. John, have you got a YouTube channel up and going yourself yet?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, that'll come.
Minded.
Yeah, that'll come, and when it does, then obviously you can communicate directly for John. But please, for now, just send the comments through here. John and I communicate on many different channels, so anything that you send to me, I can
questions or anything that are asked, I can go and answer them, or
yeah, I can text them to you, or you can jump in and have a look on the channel and see the comments that are there. Alrighty. Yeah. Alright folks, hope you've had fun wherever you are. Stay safe, enjoy the rest of your Friday night or Saturday wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you again real soon. Cheers now.
See you later.